Chapter 6, Adventures in and Out of Town. The Legend of Sunset Shimmer, Majora's Mask. By Ganondorf 8. October 1, 2015. Chapter 6, Adventures in and Out of Town. When I reached Pinkie Pie, she took no notice of me because she was preoccupied with drawing one of her maps, and I found this odd given she noticed me last time when I had the body of a Deku scrub. Actually having her floating above via her balloon did pose a problem, for I now don't have the means to bring her down. My magic won't work like it did in Hyrule due to Termina's magical properties being different, and finding a stone to throw would be a waste of time even though I do technically have as much as I want. Turning to Twilight, I asked her what I could do to get Pinkie down here. Her response involved pointing at my pockets where I had tucked away the Deku mask after receiving it upon changing back into a human.
What will this thing accomplish?
I asked.
Even though you're human again, you'll still have need of your Deku scrub form. Such an example of needing it is right here, for you don't have a projectile weapon such as a bow for instance, so using a bubble will have to do as a ranged attack until then. I would have suggested using magic, but that isn't an option because of what Adajo said about Termina restricting you,
replied Twilight.
How about your magic?
I asked.
You know, I didn't even consider that until you mentioned it just now,
replied Twilight. She then floated in front of me, and looked up at the balloon which indicated to me that she intended on popping it herself. Concentrating as hard as she could, Twilight attempted to fire a magic beam like what we can do back in Equestria, but nothing happened which made her look and feel crestfallen. It looks like her magic has the same restriction as what has been placed on mine, or maybe it has to do with the fact that she is a fairy here in Termina rather than an alicorn.
Nothing happened. That means my magic can't be used either. You should have fairy magic,
I began.
Fairies are capable of that?
Asked Twilight.
When I was going around Hyrule, Spike demonstrated such magic when he wasn't affected by certain conditions compared to myself who was vulnerable. Granted, he couldn't use it against monsters or anything like that, but he could use it to protect himself if necessary. I'm sure you can figure it out, Twilight, as magic is what you're good at in addition to being a valuable friend,
I replied.
Well, that brings us back to square one, which involves you transforming into a Deku scrub again. When you originally changed, it was through a curse inflicted upon you by Starlight Glimmer which may have been painful, but who knows what will happen upon putting that mask onto your face,
said Twilight.
Now's as good a time as any,
I said. Looking at the Deku mask I held in my hands upon taking it out of my pouch, I began to think about what would happen the moment I put it on. I know I'll assume my previous form even though it won't be under any curse, but how will the transition go? Will it be so painful that I'd never want to try it again, or will there be relatively no pain at all? Good thing I'm doing this now instead of during an intense situation, for I would be freaking out at this exact moment. Closing my eyes and taking several deep breaths, I gripped the mask firmly before putting it onto my face. For about a few seconds, nothing happened which felt normal, but then I started to perform some kind of choking maneuver even though I had nothing in my throat. This would continue on with me feeling like wanting to rip the mask right off of my face because of how I felt, and when it got to the point where I couldn't take it any longer, I let out a scream before everything flashed in a bright light. When my vision came back to me, I had assumed my Deku scrub form, but I looked around at a rapid pace hoping no one heard me, and luckily no one had taken any notice of what just happened.
Are you alright?
Asked Twilight.
Even though it looked and felt like I was in a lot of pain during that transformation, I actually feel pretty good,
I replied.
Unlike before where you were stuck like that, you can change back just by taking the mask off,
said Twilight.
I'll do that in a moment as right now I need to pop a balloon using my bubbles,
I said. Aiming at Pinkie's balloon carefully, I formed a bubble in my mouth and fired it at the balloon causing it to pop. Pinkie then yelled before dropping down to the ground where she buckled her knees upon the landing, and once again she was completely fine, which still didn't make sense as someone falling from that kind of height would get hurt.
Now all you need to do is grab at your face, and the mask will come right off, thus changing you back. Oh, and I wouldn't worry about changing back and forth in front of people as they won't remember any of it when you reset time,
said Twilight. That was actually a major concern which had formed into my mind, but then it disappeared upon Twilight mentioning it. I grabbed my Deku scrub face, and pulled the mask off, which took some doing, but after another flash of light, I was back to my human form once again.
Expect to do this transition quite often because you'll need to rely on your other form. I'll get used to it eventually, but right now I'll probably complain about the feeling I get when putting it on,
I said.
Be glad you don't have to worry about that happening when you try any other mask you might get, and that includes the one Adajo gave you. Speaking of masks, I was thinking we could on occasion pay a visit to Sonata, and ask her about the history or significance of the masks in your possession. If anyone would know about how they work, it will be her no doubt,"
said Twilight. That made sense to me, but what Twilight didn't realize was that Sonata expects me to bring her Majora's mask whenever I go into the lower portion of the clock tower. Sure, she might explain about other masks, yet she will constantly make me feel guilty over not fulfilling my end of the deal. Despite being a good person here in Termina, Sonata still had some of her evil intent from Equestria. Sighing, I walked over to Pinkie Pie, who finally took notice of me.
"What's this? Green clothes? White fairy? Madam? Are you by chance a forest fairy?"
asked Pinkie Pie.
"You already?"
I began before remembering that I reset time, so she doesn't know who I am even though I did buy a map from her. I'll need to act like I've never seen her before, even though this opening statement is probably going to get real annoying over time.
"Yes, you might say that, but that isn't really important, Pinkie Pie, for I need to speak with you about information which I know you have."
Did I just call her Pinkie Pie instead of the name she is known as in Termina? In my mind, I had just made a massive blunder which could cause me to get into even more trouble.
"Hey, Pinkie Pie? Now that's a funny name, yet it reminds me of my friend, Pinkle, who lives somewhere in Termina. I haven't seen her for a really long time, so when I've got a free moment, I'll pay her a visit. Now then, I am Tingle Madam, and I believe I'm the same as you. A forest fairy, but alas no fairy has come to me yet. My father tells me to act my age because of being 35 years old, but why consign myself to such misery? My father's words won't affect my resolve. I tell you, Tingle is the very reincarnation of a fairy,"
said Pinkie Pie.
"And you sell maps to help him out," I said. "Whoa. You must be a psychic if you knew that is what Tingle sells to earn herself some rupees,"
said Pinkie Pie.
"It was a lucky guess,"
I said sheepishly. In my mind, I made another blunder, as that's something she told me before, so upon resetting time, she isn't aware of telling me this, which means I told her something I'm not supposed to know. Already this whole time paradox bit was going to be a problem for me, and I'm off to a roaring start, but it looks as though Pinkie wasn't bothered by it.
"I'm assuming then that you aren't interested in one of my maps, which does make me feel somewhat disappointed, but I can help you with information seeing as I've seen my share of things around Clock Town and beyond,"
said Pinkie Pie.
"What do you know about masks?"
I asked.
"Masks? That's an unusual question, but then Mrs. Fairy, you are an unusual person. Masks. Masks. Yes, I have been hearing about certain people in Clock Town who have some, but then why would people their ages have masks unless it was for the Carnival of Time celebration, which happens in 3 days from now? Do you know Mayor Dodur, who is in charge of this town? Whether you do or not isn't a big deal, but her husband Monsieur Aroma has been in a real panic as of late. Their Sun Cafe vanished about a month ago for reasons unknown, but the real tragedy is that he was supposed to get married, and the family of the bride claim that he abandoned his obligations due to being cowardly, which may or may not be accurate,"
replied Pinkie Pie.
"What does this have to do with Monsieur Aroma?"
I asked.
"He's looking for someone, anyone with experience to find his son, and is willing to give them a special mask to help in the investigation. So far, no one has offered to help, as a lot of people do suspect that Cafe is nothing but a scoundrel for running away. The only one willing to give him any kind of defense is his fiancée, Anju, but then she is being pressured to forget all about him, and find someone else,"
replied Pinkie Pie. The mask that can be obtained from Monsieur Aroma does sound promising, and finding a missing person would be the right thing to do. Despite this being a redo of the 3-day cycle, it's like everything is brand new, as this is information I didn't know the first time through.
"Does anyone else know about Cafe who would be willing to talk about him?"
I asked.
"There is the man from the curiosity shop, for he is an old friend of Cafe's, but he can be difficult to deal because of the shady business he deals with,"
replied Pinkie Pie.
"Curiosity shop?"
I asked with a confused expression on my face.
"It's located in West Clock Town, but it only opens from 10 p.m. at night until 6 a.m. the following morning, and that's due to how shady the place is. They say the man who runs the place acquires items that you can't find anywhere else, yet much of the time it's stolen goods brought in by thieves. They have a tendency to go there to sell him something in exchange for rupees, and it's all under the table because they can't sell at normal shops, otherwise the town soldiers will be after them,"
replied Pinkie Pie. "So thieves use this shop to sell stolen goods, so does that mean lightning dust goes there as well?" I need to ask the right question, otherwise Pinky may think of me as being suspicious, but maybe I can find a mask at this curiosity shop, as those do qualify as rare items.
Do you know of a prancing thief?
I asked.
I've seen her hanging out around here a few times, and she is a regular at the curiosity shop. I don't know her name as she often comes around here during the night, so your best bet would be to speak to the owner. Oh yeah. Apparently, he has a thing when it comes to anyone who isn't human, so the other tribes never go there. I know this next bit is going to sound a little sinister, but if you have something you don't need, and wish to earn a lot of money, the guy will buy it from you at pretty good prices.
Replied Pinkie Pie.
What does he sell?
I asked.
Most of what can be bought from him are stolen, but there was a weird-looking mask among his collection. He hasn't sold it yet, for other items keep coming in which has him focus on those, but if he were to not get any goods within the next couple of nights, he's bound to sell the mask. I heard the price is just outrageous, but if you're the kind of person who has an interest in masks, you'll pay the amount asked without any questions.
Replied Pinkie Pie. Something told me that it's going to take more than 99 rupees, which is my current rupee limit to get it, so I'll need to deposit rupees into the bank whenever I get a free moment. Adagio said Pinky has more knowledge of the world outside of Clock Town than she does, so perhaps I should inquire about both Woodfall and Milk Road.
What do you know of Woodfall?
I asked.
Hey? The swamp where the Deku tribe live? I know quite a bit about that area, but I'd rather talk about it when I'm there, otherwise I just can't get in the mood. The same goes for pretty much any area in Termina, so if you want more information, Mrs. Fairy, you'll need to speak to me in that particular area. I may not look like it based on my appearance, but I can get around relatively quickly when I use my balloon.
Replied Pinkie Pie.
How can you get to those other places when you're standing right here?
I asked.
Trade secret,
replied Pinkie Pie.
Seriously?
I asked.
I've got some things I'd rather not share with anyone,
replied Pinkie Pie. My response to this was slapping myself in the forehead, for I should have known Pinky would say something to that effect. She is just being Pinkie Pie after all, although it'd be nice if she could tell me about Woodfall and Milk Road, as I'm going to check those places out once my errands here in town are over.
Well, that's all the information I have, Mrs. Fairy, so hopefully we'll meet up later. Call again. Tingle, Tingle, Kololimpa. These are the magic words that Tingle created herself. Don't steal them.
With that, she inflated her balloon, and took to the air again, leaving me feeling frustrated over not being told everything. I mean, how can she not talk about an area unless she happens to be there? Who does that? In any case, I did learn some valuable information, so all I have to do is wait here until nightfall, and prevent lightning dust from robbing the old lady.
Well, that was awkward,
commented Twilight.
How do you put up with that?
I asked.
Sometimes, I have to question her sense of ethics, but she is a really good friend. We have some time to kill now until that robbery happens tonight, as I know you don't want to leave town until you stop lightning dust.
Replied Twilight.
Actually, I want to test a theory, I began. Regarding?
Asked Twilight.
Even though I never walked towards one of those soldiers as a Deku scrub during the last cycle, which would have cost them to turn me back, I was thinking that I should talk to the one over there, and see what his reaction will be, I replied. They are very persistent about children leaving town without being accompanied by an adult, but that guy might be willing to listen if you prove to him that you can take care of yourself outside where all those monsters are, said Twilight.
Acting with confidence, I walked towards the soldier, who immediately thrust his lance out at me, which indicated he had no intention of letting me by, so this is where my theory was about to be proven.
Stop right there. Have you an errand in the mountains?
Maybe I should have talked to the one standing guard at the southern entrance, as I don't really need to pay a visit to the mountains until I've gotten stronger and more items, according to Adagio. Thinking quickly, I nodded my approval, hoping he would be convinced of my intentions, but his spear was still pointing at me, which meant he didn't believe me.
It is dangerous outside the town walls, so I cannot allow a child like you to. A sword.
He then took notice of my kokiri sword located in its scabbard on my back, so I quickly took it out and placed it in front of him.
This is my sword, which I use to defend myself, I said. My apologies, madam. It was wrong of me to treat you like a child. Anyone with a sword and shield can easily hold their own against the creatures which have been festering about Termina Field these past few days, but I recommend against traveling to the mountains. How come?
I asked.
Snowhead is known for its winter weather, which can make it difficult especially for those who aren't used to the conditions, but lately the weather there has gotten so bad that it's become a natural disaster. The Gorons are having problems up there as all of that cold is too much for them, but even if we could send some supplies up there, the pathway to the mountains has been blocked off by an unusual ice formation.
Unusual? I asked.
Rumors say that someone wearing a mask erected the ice which blocks the way, but I can't say for certain if it's true or not.
It sounds like Starlight Glimmer has been causing problems all across Termina aside from Clock Town, and I was hoping that wouldn't be the case. This is why I needed Pinkie Pie to tell me about these other areas, for I would have made my way south without knowing what I had to go through on my way to a temple.
If you still insist on going, the mountains of Snowhead lie this way. Be careful.
The soldier then moved aside before raising his spear, which meant I could now leave town whenever I want, so I picked up my sword, placed it back into its sheath, and then I turned to face him as I wanted to ask him a couple of questions about Termina Field as he called it.
Do you know of any unusual occurrences or the like out there? Well, I have been hearing some kind of strange music coming from near this entrance, yet it only happens at night, which strikes me as odd. The ironic thing is that the same music can be heard in West Clock Town when the Rosa sisters go over there to practice as they've done for the last few days since their troupe arrived. In case you don't know who they are, the Gorman troupe are a group of performers who entertain people with their various acts. There are the Rosa sisters, professional dancers, but they appear to be having some trouble coming up with something that is sure to wow the crowd. Guru is a musician who has an unusual looking accordion, but rumors say he is having trouble practicing due to the noise. Then there are the jugglers who can juggle in many different formations, yet they refuse to share with names with anyone as they prefer to remain anonymous. Finally, there is Gorman himself, their leader who essentially handled the business side of things, and also owns the troupe given why it's named after him. They are staying at the Stockpot Inn until the Carnival of Time has finished, so if you want to get yourself an autograph, do it now before they leave for their next show.
That certainly was quite a mouthful, the soldier said to me, and while much of it didn't really spark my interest, what he said about the strange music coming from outside is something I wanted to check out. Of course, I already had plenty of things to do, what with preventing a robbery, and going to the laundry pool where someone wishes to confess a hidden secret they've been holding back. So, investigating the strange music will have to happen after I've gotten my hands on a mask.
Are you thinking of looking into that?
Asked Twilight.
The music?
I asked.
Yes,
replied Twilight.
It seems you've been rubbing off on me, Twilight, as I'm curious as to what we will discover,
I said.
Termina certainly does have a lot of mysteries surrounding it, and while it does mean throwing ourselves into constant danger, I'm all up for wanting to discover as many different secrets as possible. By the way, before you leave town after taking care of business, you should speak to the soldier guarding the southern entrance. He might have some information that we couldn't get from Pinkie Pie. We've nothing to do now, so we might as well get some sleep until we need to stop lightning dust. Given how you can reset time whenever you want, sleeping isn't a bad thing so long as you don't miss anything important,
said Twilight. I was thinking maybe of making a note in the notebook given to me by Pipsqueak, and Twilight agreed as that would keep it fresh in my mind. She even insisted on ringing out using her fairy magic as an alarm, and while I had to question such an ability, she insisted on it given how we're both heavy sleepers. There was a spot in the corner of the area which looked ideal for sleeping, so I walked over there, and sat down before closing my eyes, and Twilight settled down on my hat. Since I had my sword on hand, I doubt anyone was going to try and take advantage of me sleeping, so I drifted off into my subconscious where I had that dream again. The flames were still surrounding me, yet it didn't approach as though it knew that I now had the means to stave off the impending destruction. I was actually expecting Ganondorf to make an appearance, and sure enough, his silhouette appeared in the flames. His glowing eyes were truly intimidating at first, but I've got to prevent myself from succumbing, otherwise he'll have complete power over me.
So, you have figured out the secret of manipulating time to your whim, said Ganondorf. At first it looked as though things would become a disaster, but then a memory of the true hero appeared in my head, I said. Yes. The hero of time. He was the first one who bested me in battle, causing me to be banished to the sacred realm in that respective timeline, and you repeated this same process. Of course, his life was ended by my hands in another timeline, so his success against me was nulled by this branch within time itself. Know this, child. When the hero left to find someone dear to him, and pulled into this world by fate, he was separated from the elements which made him what he was. The Triforce of Courage. It became lost to him, said Ganondorf. And since I'm portraying him, the same thing has applied to me, I said. If you truly think this, then you are more of a fool than I suspected originally. Because of my will, you still possess the Triforce of Courage in this time, so therefore you are still bound to both Zelda and my younger self who even now awaits his execution which was botched due to an unforeseen coincidence,"
said Ganondorf. I thought he was bluffing as a means of making me more nervous than I already am given what this dream meant, but when I looked at the back of my hand, the mark of the Triforce appeared which meant he was telling the truth. My heart sank knowing this unfortunate reality was true instead of false, yet it also showed that Ganondorf was able to manipulate time just like I could. Except to him, this was something he had been doing for centuries.
"You are not the only one who can manipulate the flow of time, child, for how else do you suppose we are having this encounter? There is much you do not yet understand, but perhaps this will become apparent to you. Still, upon thinking back to this era, I underestimated Zelda, for she gave you the means to delay the inevitable."
"She is wise beyond her years," I said.
"And also naive for she knows little about the grand scope which exists,"
said Ganondorf.
"What do you want?"
I asked.
"My aim is not to distract you from your pitiful obligations, but to tell you that your efforts will bear no fruit. Just because you are delaying the destruction that is to come does not mean that it can be overcome. My words confuse you, yet it will become clear once everything has been put into place. Become stronger, child. Go beyond the boundaries which contained you in Hyrule, and surpass any and all obstacles that stand in your way. Do not assume that I want you to succeed overall, for that is not the case, as I desire you to suffer much. I want to make certain that you live up to my expectations, and it will involve fighting me at a time which will be decided by me,"
replied Ganondorf.
"And if my strength doesn't satisfy?"
I asked.
"Then you shall die. It is by my will, and mine alone that you still live, for I would have killed you when we faced off last time before I sent you back to where you truly came from. Or perhaps at an earlier opportunity. I could end the miserable existence that is your life on the very day where you were born, and were nothing more than a mewling little child who cried out for attention. Such is my power, so you would do well not to betray my expectations,"
replied Ganondorf.
"Gasp! Twilight!"
I exclaimed.
"She, and the rest of those from both of your worlds cannot escape my power, for I could kill them in the exact same manner. Even those who serve as the guiding light and darkness of your true home would succumb in the same way. Time holds no bounds to me as there is nothing that can deny me what I truly desire, and you would do well to remember this harsh lesson. There is no need for me to remain here within your subconscious any longer, for already your spirit has been crushed by the harsh reality I have now passed on to you. Your worlds can be conquered with ease as both lack the means to repel one who is pure power. Remember. Do not betray my expectations, otherwise your life as well as theirs will become forfeit. Yes, I am tying their future with your success, so this will give you an even greater incentive to improve. Fail, and they shall forever condemn one such as you for eternity,"
said Ganondorf. He then folded his arms before beginning to laugh, and then he disappeared into the flames which caused me to wake up with a scream once again along with the sweat dripping down my face. I couldn't believe that he would do something like that. He had no right to place the lives of everyone I know upon my shoulders, but then he does have the power to do so given how he is able to perform all kinds of things with just a mere thought. Twilight was accidentally awoken, and flung into the wall when I woke up, and her groggy complexion was nothing compared with how irritated she was about being woken up. That's when she began to ring indicating that it was time to prevent the robbery from taking place, but that's the least of my worries given what just happened. Night of the first day, 60 hours remain.
"I hope you have a pretty good reason for waking me up like that,"
moaned Twilight.
"Yes, but I'm not sure how you'll take it," I said. "Try me,"
moaned Twilight. I then explained to her that Ganondorf appeared in my dream again where he proceeded to reveal that I still possessed the Triforce of Courage, and that everyone I knew from the human world and Equestria were in danger. He would kill all of them without hesitation, and conquer both worlds should I not live up to the expectations he has of me. I even told her about he could kill me at any time. Quite literally, as he could go back through time's flow, and kill me on the day of my birth. I assume this is also true for everyone else, and not even Princess Celestia and Princess Luna can oppose him. Upon finishing, Twilight felt concerned about everyone, and wished something could be done to change things back to the way they were.
"That will take a long time knowing what happened before," I sighed. "He sounds just like Tyrek, only much more sadistic," said Twilight. "That's who portrayed Ganondorf," I said. "Seriously?"
asked Twilight.
"We just have to get through this as fast as possible, otherwise everyone will suffer because of us, or rather I should say me, as I'm the one Ganondorf wants to see improve as a means of pleasing his ego," I replied.
Getting back to the matter at hand, I jumped to my feet and began looking for where I found lightning dust before, and sure enough she was waiting behind that playground apparatus. I walked over to her in the hopes of making some kind of conversation, and hopefully distract her until the old lady makes her way through here.
"You're quite an unusual kid considering you're wearing green clothes,"
said Lightning Dust.
"I would have worn something else, but it's okay as I've grown fond of this tunic,"
I said. Even though I could stop her right here and now, she hasn't done anything wrong yet, and falsely accusing her could land me in a lot of trouble. Besides, I have an opportunity to inquire about the curiosity shop as Lightning Dust is a regular customer according to what Pinkie Pie said.
"In case you're wondering, I'm just hanging out here by myself not doing anything,"
said Lightning Dust.
"It must feel lonely, doesn't it?"
I asked.
"At times that's true, but in my line of work, you can't afford to build any friendships as you never know who is going to stab you in the back next. By the way, that's a very nice looking sword you have there. I know this sounds rude of me considering we've only just met, but would it be okay if I look at it? Just for a second? I'm not going to break it or anything as a blade of that caliber deserves far better,"
replied Lightning Dust.
"Actually, I'm really attached to it because I borrowed it a long time ago, and didn't give it back when I was finished,"
I said.
"That's okay then. I wasn't implying anything, mind you, but I really did want to have a good look at it. Anyway, why is a kid out here in the middle of the night? I thought someone like you would still be asleep, yet here you are talking to me,"
said Lightning Dust. "Oh, I was going to let her see my sword soon enough, but I just need to wait until the old lady arrives, which should happen shortly according to her, as she said it was the middle of the night."
"You know, kid, if you really wanted to, you could sell that sword, and get a lot of rupees for it in return. There's a shop on the west side of town whose owner buys anything no matter where it originated from. Then again, going there may not be all that beneficial given how the guy cheats you of a good payout." "You know of this place?"
I asked.
"I'm a regular there because of my choice in profession, but the guy is greedy and cruel to no end. He always gouges when it comes to selling him things, and he does the same thing when it comes to selling what he has. Of course, no other shop in town does his kind of business, so you have to just accept the fact he will cheat you. Sometimes I wonder why I continue going there when clearly I should take my business elsewhere, or just retire from my line of work, and live out my life in comfort. Despite being a kid, you're someone he would want to deal with,"
replied Lightning Dust.
"I'm hoping he sells a certain item,"
I said.
"What is it?"
asked Lightning Dust.
"A mask,"
I replied.
"You want to purchase that weird thing? I've been a regular of his for quite some time, and not even I would buy that. Since you've laid claim to it, and are actually the only person who has shown interest in it, you can have it if you think it will make you feel better. Of course, it depends on if it will be available. After tonight, he should be getting in something that is normally sold at the bomb shop, so the mask won't be available as he will be focused on selling the other item,"
replied Lightning Dust. Now it's all starting to make sense. If Lightning Dust succeeds in robbing that old lad, the curiosity shop will have a bomb bag on sale, and not the mask which I need. She must be stopped, otherwise I'll lose out on not only one mask, but a potential second, as a dojo did say the old lady has one.
"Well, thanks for the information,"
I said.
"Hopefully, you'll sell that sword for good money,"
said Lightning Dust. As I walked away from her, I turned around to see if she was still paying attention to me, and she wasn't, which means I can prepare to stop her. Since I wasn't in the area when the robbery originally occurred, this will be a blind attempt, for who knows when she will make her move, and her fast speed could pose a problem. Waiting near where Pinkie was floating, who seemed oblivious to everything, I sat down and pretended that I was falling back asleep so as to not let Lightning Dust know of my intentions. After a few minutes of just sitting there, the old lady appeared from the entrance gate, where she began walking towards the path which leads south. I then turned my attention towards my would-be thief, and discovered she was already making her way over. Her manner of walking looked so weird, but then this masked her motives, as anyone would view her as harmless. Waiting carefully for the moment to occur, Lightning Dust bumped into the old lady without a care in the world.
"Ouch. Hey. Watch where you're going." "My apologies,"
said Lightning Dust.
"Well, don't make a habit of it in the future. Believe me. After this, you won't be seeing me again,"
said Lightning Dust.
"Makes sense, you strange woman." "Hey? What they? Stop. Thief. Give the old lady her luggage back."
That was my cue to get up, and stop this robbery, as I can't allow this to happen. Lightning Dust began prancing about while holding a bag which must belong to her victim, so I darted out in front of her before drawing my sword and shield, which certainly took her by surprise.
"What are you doing, kid?"
asked Lightning Dust.
"Take a wild guess," I replied. "And here I thought you were on the level, but it turns out that you're one of those do-gooder types who stop people like me from doing what they do best. A shame really, for you could have become something better,"
said Lightning Dust.
"Been there, done that," I said.
As I held my sword close to her face, she did step back a few paces, which had me suspect she was going to surrender, yet I was distracted by what she said. I'll never go back to the way I used to be, as the old me no longer exists aside from Sunset Demon, but hopefully that doesn't become an issue. As my mind was thinking about her words, Lightning Dust suddenly began running in an attempt to get out of town, taking her stolen goods with her. I was thinking of attacking her, but I could never do that to a living person, so I decided to come up with another tactic which should work. I immediately began to run in an attempt to keep up, and she proved to be rather fast even though she was prancing about a few moments ago.
"You have no chance catching up with me, kid, for I'm much too fast,"
laughed Lightning Dust.
"I'm willing to bet that bag is quite heavy," I said. "Yeah, so what of it?"
asked Lightning Dust. She quickly answered her own question as I caught up with her before swinging my sword, and hoping that I don't fling it across the area like in the past. I connected with the bag, causing her to drop it, and she began cursing, which made it hard to understand what she was saying.
"Ack! Why are you doing this to me? If you hadn't interfered with my plans, I could have made some sweet money selling the contents of that bag. You wretched brat! I'll be sure to remember this, so watch your back as I'll be there to get my revenge."
She then ran past the soldier standing guard who did nothing to stop her, and while that made me feel annoyed, the important thing was that the robbery had been prevented this time. It felt good doing something like this, and I showed restraint as I could have seriously hurt her had my sword not connected correctly. I walked over to where the bag had fallen during the scuffle, where I picked it up before handing it over to the old lady, and the expression she was giving me made my heart feel good.
"You saved my life, and stopped that thief from stealing my bag." "It was the least I could do," I said. "My son always warns me about coming this way, especially at night, for thieves enjoy lurking about in North Clock Town. I believe whenever we have need to bring a delivery to the bomb shop, I'll either have him take care of it, or I'll travel during the day where it's much safer. I run the bomb shop located in the western part of town, and thanks to your efforts, young lady, we can finally sell the big bomb bag, which has been a dream of ours for some time." "Any chance I could buy one?" I asked. "Well, you don't have a regular bomb bag on your person, so I wouldn't be able to sell you the bigger one unless you buy the first one. Maybe I'll put 'em out tomorrow, seeing as you prevented me from being robbed. You really helped me out, so thank you for aiding an old lady in her time of need. For that, I shall reward you, and I won't take no for an answer. Yes, I must thank you. It's a dangerous mask, but maybe you could use it to throw your own festival fireworks show."
The old lady then reached into her bag where she took out an unusual-looking object which had a skull on the front of it, and then she placed it into my hands, where I felt confused.
"What is this?" I asked. "It's known as the blast mask. It is quite literally a bomb that you wear, and when you use its special powers, the mask will explode, which can be useful if you need to destroy any kind of obstacle that's gotten in your way. However, there is a price that must be paid. Life energy. Unless you're willing to accept the mask causing bodily harm upon you every time you use it, I suggest that it be saved for special occasions where you have no alternative. Well, thanks for helping me. Take care." With that, she slowly walked away towards the bomb shop, yet the confused look on my face was pretty evident. I looked at the mask which she had placed into my hands, and I didn't really know what to think of it other than it would be too dangerous to use because I'll get hurt. "Wow! That's certainly a strange reward," said Twilight. "The thought of blowing myself up using this mask freaks me out, but I suppose it can work in a pinch, especially when I don't have any bombs," I said. "Wait. You can use bombs?" asked Twilight. "I know they are dangerous, and in both Equestria and the human world, they are used only by professionals who work in the demolition business, yet I'm allowed to use them without any restrictions provided that I have a bag to put them in. You know, you're going through the exact same reactions I had when I first discovered certain things were possible in this video game, but I still get the reaction on occasion because of not expecting it. Still, I'm not sure if I should use the blast mask, as I could accidentally kill myself if my health were too low, which can happen, mind you," I replied. "You could actually prevent any damage by raising your shield, and then using the mask to blow something up, It will probably affect the radius of the blast, but then you would be unharmed. I'd keep it on you just in case, as it could come in handy,"
said Twilight.
"I suppose you're right, but hopefully I won't be relying too much on it. Well, we've sorted out that problem which netted me a mask as well as doing a good deed, so why don't we head over to the laundry pool? Adagio said that someone there has a mask, but desires to talk about something personal to any who would listen,"
I said. After putting the blast mask in one of my many pouches, I began to head south towards the laundry pool, and along the way, I had to take out the bomber's notebook as it began to start glowing like it were trying to tell me something about my actions in stopping lightning dust. Opening it up, I was shocked to see an entry had appeared representing the old lady, and all of those details Pipsqueak mentioned were here too: the old lady's schedule, the reward I received for helping her, and a ribbon to say that I had solved her problem. If it was going to be this easy, maybe I should try solving every single problem. Upon reaching the laundry pool, I could hear something which sounded like music, but I doubt it was the kind that Soldier was talking about. He said the music he heard came from outside, while this music was clearly coming from within town. I'm surprised that no one has complained about it being nothing but noise, yet I guess this area doesn't have any kind of population except for any who desire to be left alone with their thoughts. Twilight suggested that I get my sword and shield ready just in case things were to eventually go wrong, but I insisted otherwise, as whoever was playing this music was most likely harmless. Besides, it was a music I recognize from Hyrule, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing Twilight's reaction if the performer is who I think it is. Walking down the pathway before entering the main part of the laundry pool, I looked to my left, which was where the music was coming from, and it was him, which felt nice for consistency purposes.
"What the? Discord!"
exclaimed Twilight.
"I was waiting to see that reaction where you freak out over unexpected twists," I laughed. "Why is he here? Also, his human form looks pretty normal even though you can still see traits of his true self,"
said Twilight. Playing the accordion was the Master of Chaos who, like me, was once a villain but had reformed, yet in his case it was Fluttershy who managed to see him as a true friend while everyone else didn't think of him as such. Twilight had been flying about like she was having a sugar rush, but she eventually calmed down before flying into my face.
"How come you're not as freaked out as I am over seeing the likes of Discord?"
I then told her that I met him in Hyrule, where he played the exact same instrument as seen here, yet he was the owner of a windmill located in Kakariko village. He was originally someone who liked having fun with his music, but eventually lost his mind, and became more chaotic in his mannerisms. While Twilight is well familiar with how Discord operates as a character, the same can't be said about myself, as I left before he was freed from his imprisonment after 1,000 years, so all I know about him are various legends Princess Celestia taught me. Twilight was hesitant about me talking to him, for aforementioned reasons, yet I'm expecting him to be more mellow given he's just standing there playing his accordion. I walked up to him where he didn't pay any attention, so I coughed a little, which made him turn towards me, where he smiled a creepy smile which made Twilight nervous.
"La la la. They said I was much too loud when I practiced in my room. They got mad. Sigh. Now I'm sad,"
said Discord.
"Who got mad at you?"
I asked.
"Allow me to introduce myself, stranger. I am Guru, musician of the Gorman troupe. Ever since we arrived in Clocktown a few days ago, I've been trying to practice for our performance during the Carnival of Time, for without my music, my fellow performers won't be in sync with one another. But, they needed peace and quiet because they struggle to come up with something extravagant, so they told me to go away for a while. I came down here to this area where I can play to my heart's content during the night until I desire sleep, yet I believe my efforts may be for naught,"
replied Discord.
"There's nothing wrong with your music," I said. "It's not that, dear guest, but rather it has to do with the complications which have arisen for not only us, but for the other performers who came here from their respective regions for the carnival. According to Gorman, our leader, it appears they plan on cancelling the carnival because of what you can see above our heads. Namely the moon. It has instilled fear in their hearts, making them want to take such action. It has angered Gorman so much, he now wallows away in the milk bar even as I speak, but he made me promise not to tell the others, for such knowledge would break their hearts,"
said Discord.
"And that's why you're sad?"
I asked.
"Yes, so I'll just think about the past to keep my mind off the bad." "Ah, yes, I'll do that,"
replied Discord. He then stopped playing his accordion, and proceeded to look up at the night sky, making me wonder what he was thinking. After a few minutes of doing this, he looked at me before sitting down on a bench that was situated behind him, and he beckoned me to join him.
"Dear guest, long ago, I was in an animal troupe with dogs and donkeys and such. No offense, but that doesn't sound weird at all,
I said sarcastically.
I know it's weird, but you see they accepted me into their troop without question,
said Discord. He then began to play his accordion again, but at much faster pace while giving off an evil expression on his face which felt uncomfortable. Twilight whispered that we should get out of here as there was no telling when he was going to lose it, but I insisted on sticking around as this story piqued my curiosity.
Why could a man join? That's 'cause a man is an animal, too, my dear. We are all of the same kingdom, so it made sense for me to travel around with animals. Even though they were restricted to their various sounds, I could understand what they were saying. It sounds to me like it was quite the experience, I said. Oh yes. For a few years, I traveled about with them learning their ways, and appreciating everything they did. Despite me being an outcast given my station in people's eyes, the animals treated me as one of their own. They were all great, but there was one thing I didn't like about it,
said Discord.
What was that?
I asked.
Why was the dog the leader? Was it 'cause something was wrong with me, madam? Considering I was the highest animal among them because of being a human, it should have been me to lead them. I had the qualities to be an ideal leader, for I could have easily brought them under my control, yet they didn't want me to become their leader as they feared my way of thinking was too radical,
replied Discord. Now I'm beginning to understand why Twilight wanted us to go, for Discord can be very irrational whenever he loses his temper, yet what he just said had me thinking about my friend. She has become a leader of ponies due to being a princess in Equestria, yet she wouldn't instill her philosophies on anyone as means of forcing them to obey her. Twilight is a perfect example of someone who is reluctant about leading anyone, but would if no other choice was available for her. Discord on the other hand, would be incapable in the role of a leader as his volatile behavior would become his undoing. As he continued to play his accordion quickly because of having to talk about something in his past he probably didn't want to talk to anyone about, he suddenly smiled and stopped playing like he was completely normal compared from a minute. Guess you could call that a sudden mood swing, but I'll hold my breath on that subject.
Oh, that dog was an amazing leader. He always had a stellar troop no matter what animals he had to work with. There was no animal that he could not lead. The others looked up to him with the utmost respect, and in a way I too respected him despite believing that I would be the better leader, but before I left the troop to pursue my own interests, I did something which I regret even now, and while there are times I wish I could have left under different circumstances, the past cannot be changed. And that is?
I asked.
That's why I stole it. The dog's mask. I stole it,
replied Discord.
You stole a mask from a dog?
I asked.
I wanted it because it was the leader's mask. A symbol of his authority as leader of the animal troop. I felt that without his mask, the dog would no longer feel respected by the others, but who knows if this is still true after all this time. They may still look up to him even though he no longer has it, but I no longer need it. I give it to my guest as thanks for listening to my confession. I feel relieved knowing that I finally told someone about this after keeping my secret to myself for so long,
replied Discord. He reached into a pocket where he pulled out a mask in the shape of an eagle's head, and proceeded to give it to me, which I took even though I was shocked by what he had done to a dog because of being jealous. I can't blame him though as I felt that way once.
This is the Bremen mask. Used as a symbol of authority for animals, for they look up to anyone who wears it. Even though my disdain towards the dog caused me to steal his mask to begin with, he was a good instructor. His members matured quickly and they became adults in an instant. If you were to play some kind of instrument in front of some animals, they are bound to follow you around due to the nature of the mask. Thank you for listening to my confession of guilt, so now I can go back to my room without feeling sad about my past actions. Glad I could listen, I said.
Discord got up from the bench before he bowed before me, and walked away leaving me once again to ponder over what just happened. I get he was ashamed of what he did, but to do so to animals? It's a good thing Fluttershy wasn't here to see this, for she would have given him quite a stern talking to. Looking at this new mask I received, I could sense the power of leadership flowing about it, but where could I go to find animals that could mature from its power? It's not like animals are plentiful here in Termina, or maybe I'm just missing something.
He hasn't changed,
said Twilight.
In what way?
I asked.
Discord still has to rely on his chaotic nature whenever he does anything, but I suppose he can't be blamed here seeing as this isn't the version of him I know. Still, you do have to question why he joined an animal troop despite saying humans are animals. Then again, you're an animal sunset along with myself given we're both ponies, but would that mean that mask would have some kind of effect on us? I'd rather not find out personally, but then this is your quest, so the decision is ultimately yours,"
replied Twilight.
"I may be the hero, but you're just as important," I said. "Yet you have been ignoring some of my suggestions," said Twilight. "I know, because we need to face those kinds of problems head-on, and not run away from them. Besides, as the Princess of Friendship, you're compelled to want to solve problems we run across as that's in your nature. Even when he was freaking out on us because of his irrational behavior, I wanted to listen to Discord's confession, for he needed someone to hear him out after being silent for a long time, so I gave him a shoulder to cry on," I said. "Looks like some of my mannerisms are rubbing off on you," laughed Twilight. This prompted me to laugh in response, and for a brief moment it felt like we were back in the human world laughing up a storm because of how close we'd become as friends despite starting off on the wrong foot. Once we had finished laughing, which took us a while to get it out of our systems, I carefully pocketed the Bremen mask, and took out Pinky's map to see what else I could do. Running my finger along it, I found nothing really stood out for me that I would understand with the knowledge I've learned about Clock Town, so I guess we've got to leave and explore the rest of Termina. Adagio said we need to go to the south where Woodfall is located, so that was my initial plan. Until something clicked courtesy of the Bremen mask. "Didn't those two guys mention something about a ranch?" I asked. "The entrance is currently being blocked," replied Twilight. "A ranch has animals living there, so maybe we can go there to see if this new mask can do something," I suggested. "You want to go because of that?" asked Twilight. "Actually, my reason involves seeing if we can find Applejack, for she lives on a farm in both the human world and in Equestria, and a farm is similar to a ranch. If she is there, we could get some insight on what we need to do to prepare ourselves for Woodfall," I replied. That wasn't my best reason given I flubbed through much of that, but Twilight agreed about going to this ranch to see if we can find Applejack. Plus, I do want to see if I can find an animal that would show interest in the Bremen mask, but before we leave town, I figured on asking the soldier at the gate if he had any information about Milk Road, and Woodfall given the other Solider had knowledge of Snowhead. One thing can be certain about these guys. They know how to stay on patrol, as I don't think any of them take a rest for even a moment. "Heading to the swamp at this time of night?"
The soldier asked me this question the moment I walked into his range.
"I figured on going there to see if I can find some adventure," I replied. "The heroic type are we? Well, the swamp has seen better days, what with the poison that suddenly began seeping forth into the water near the Deku Palace. People have been saying that going there is dangerous, as who knows when the poison will spread until it covers every last inch of water, but then those Dekus are suffering more than anyone else living in the region." "The Deku tribe live in the swamp?" I asked. "Despite being untrustworthy given how they've backstabbed every other tribe on multiple occasions, they don't deserve to be living among something as horrible as poison, for they need that water to survive. Unfortunately, no one knows much else about what's happening there, as the Deku tribe are very reclusive, so unless you could somehow become one of their own, you have no chance of seeing them under any circumstances." "They sound paranoid," I said. "You could say that, but then most people leave them alone because of what history has taught us. The road to the swamp is dangerous during the night, so be careful of the undead monsters which lurk about out there, but you appear capable given you've got a sword and shield on hand." He gave me a salute, which was nice of him, and with that I walked through the gate, and out into Termina Field, which looked rather small especially when compared to Hyrule Field. "This is it?" I asked. "Were you expecting more?" asked Twilight. "Yes. This field just consists of what we're seeing in front of us," I replied. "You've already forgotten that Clock Town is situated in the heart of Termina, so the field is a lot bigger than this. For some unknown reason, each quadrant of the field which connects to one of the 4 regions has an ecosystem that matches up with that region. What we're seeing right now is the Woodfall variation of Termina Field, so I'm guessing this helps people figure out where to go, especially when they rarely leave town. While we could go to Woodfall as part of our main objective, we don't know much about the area despite what the soldier said about it, so paying a visit to this ranch may be our best bet. Besides, if Pinkie Pie is going to be somewhere on Milk Road like she said she would, we may find out from her what we need to know," said Twilight. "Hopefully she will cooperate instead of saying she needs to be in the swamp to tell us something," I said. "If we can explain the situation without making her upset, I'm sure she'd be willing to share some valuable information. Judging from the night sky's coloring, your conversation with Discord lasted a couple of hours, so the sun should be rising soon. However, we do need to waste time as that boulder is probably still there given those guys said it would take 2 days to remove it,"
said Twilight. "I guess we could always sleep again, but because we'll be out in the field as opposed to the somewhat safe haven of town, it could be dangerous especially when this world is still new to us." Sighing, I began to head south towards Woodfall, yet I needed to head slightly west to reach Milk Road, but no sooner had I walked a few steps, Twilight started to freak out when several winged skulls were getting closer.
"What in the world are they?" "I remember them from Hyrule,"
I replied.
"Not me,"
said Twilight.
"Use your memories as tattle, and you'll be able to tell me about them. That's what you have to do as my fairy partner Twilight, even though it seems like I'm using you to provide me with knowledge, but no, that's not the case,"
I said.
"I know Sunset Shimmer, so let me see what those memories come up with." "They are called blue bubbles, and for the most part they will ignore you unless you venture too close to them. If they hit your shield, the blue fire which surrounds them will vanish, and from there you can easily get rid of them. They also have a nasty ability where your sword becomes disabled for a couple of minutes should they make contact with you. If this happens, use the Ocarina of Time, and play some kind of soothing song to dispel the curse, otherwise you might regret it,"
said Twilight.
"That was pretty good,"
I smiled.
"Something called Deku Nuts can stun them, which can also get rid of their fire,"
said Twilight. "I remember those as well, but so far I haven't found any even though I'm still at the beginning of my journey. Deku Nuts are usually found in a forest setting, so that means I'll find plenty in Woodfall, but that isn't going to help me out here, so rather than fight all these blue bubbles at once, I decided to make a run for it, and maybe lure only 1 or 2 of them, which would make the odds work in my favor." I began to run, and sure enough they began to follow, although all 4 chased me, which isn't what I wanted. After running for a few meters, I came across a tree stump which gave me an idea. Jumping over to the other side of it, I hid there while drawing the Kokiri sword from its scabbard to prepare myself accordingly, and one of them had chosen to continue following. When it hovered over the tree stump, I was waiting for it with my shield raised as I forgot to take it out, and when it collided with my defense, the fire disappeared, enabling me to destroy the blue bubble with only a couple of hits. The other 3 had since gone back the other way, leaving me free to continue going, but then I felt good as it had been a very long time since I fought a creature. Twilight was surprised at first, but then remembered that I had prior experience, so she just shrugged it off, although it wasn't ignored by me.
"Were you worried?"
I asked.
"I thought that thing was going to hurt you, yet you took care of it with no trouble," replied Twilight. "Compared to other monsters, blue bubbles are among the weakest," I said. "Those aren't the only ones?"
asked Twilight.
"There are all kinds of monsters out there, with some being next to no challenge, and others are extremely powerful, which makes them truly frightening. Some monsters are unique in that only the one exists, yet those tend to be guarding a valuable treasure,"
I replied.
"And what about that?"
asked Twilight as she floated ahead of me, slightly indicating that I should look ahead. Flying about in the sky was some kind of weird-looking bird which stuck out like a sore thumb, and I had no idea what it was as I've never seen anything like it before. It was minding its own business given how I wasn't near it, but I have a feeling it will attack me upon getting too close. Twilight then started to rely on those memories again to figure out what this weird bird was, and when it clicked for her, she began shouting as a means of telling me to keep my distance.
"This is a rare monster known as the Takuri, and despite its odd-looking appearance, you need to keep far away from it at all costs. Should it make contact with you, it will steal an item from you, and fly off at such speed that not even Rainbow Dash could catch it." "Do you know where it takes them?" I asked. "To the curiosity shop, so make sure you don't get hit, otherwise you'll be buying your items back. This creature also has quite a sturdy body in that it takes a lot of punishment before it finally goes down, but it will always drop a large rupee worth 200 rupees. I wouldn't risk it, Sunset Shimmer, as losing an item is more important than earning a lot of money from one thing," replied Twilight. "I'm guessing this Takuri belongs to the owner of the curiosity shop, but then why train such a weird creature to steal from people coming by this way? Why not do something legitimate which would make you look less suspicious? In any case, I'm still going to visit there in order to get that mask, but I'm having serious doubts about their ethics." The Takuri unfortunately noticed me, and began to fly towards me, hoping to steal my sword, which would be the only valuable item in my possession, so I decided to run for it again, not because of being afraid, but because I don't like the idea of buying back anything stolen from me.
Twilight suggested to run through some grass to my right, which at first didn't make sense as the pathway in front was just as good, but when I started to pick up a few rupees hidden in the grass, I understood why she made the suggestion. The Takuri must drop these due to some people choosing to fight back against it, or these were dropped by its victims before they lost something precious. Once I had gotten far enough away, it turned around and flew back the other way, leaving me feel relieved for a moment, but I'll need to get past it if I want to get through to Woodfall, which must be its territory. In the meantime, the path suddenly changed where cliffs formed around either side, so this must be Milk Road, but why do they call it that anyway? I know that isn't really an important question, but my curiosity compels me to know what it means.
Do you see any more monsters?
I asked.
I think we're in the clear for now,
replied Twilight.
Good, for I think I'm going to need some additional items if I'm going to be facing stronger monsters in the future,
I said.
Where do you suppose we can find them?
Asked Twilight.
The shops back in town probably have a few good items, but that will require me to pay for them, yet some I can't buy unless I have something specific first. Other items will become available to me as I find them in dungeons, and even in hidden places where few would traverse because of the danger involved. A sword and shield won't be my ideal choices for everything Twilight, and this is something I found out the hard way back in Hyrule,
I replied. Back then, I often ran out of ammunition for several weapons such as the bow due to being bad at using it, but nothing can compare to not having potions. Healing items are the most important thing to have during an adventure, for these will determine if you can survive any given situation. Twilight thought I was being a bit overdramatic, but I told her wait and see what's to come, and she would understand. Milk Road certainly looked peaceful as it was just a simple-looking area with a path that branched off to the left of the main route, yet this peaceful scene was constantly being interrupted by the sounds of metal clanging against rock. That's when I remembered what those two men talked about when we found the missing piece of a dojo again. There was a giant boulder which was blocking off the entrance to the ranch, and sure enough there it was at the far end of the path. They weren't kidding when they said it was gigantic in size, and the person trying to break it down must be who Sweetie Belle sent here.
So Starlight Glimmer placed that boulder here?
Asked Twilight.
I don't see any other logical explanation other than dark magic,
I replied.
No wonder those two guys said that it would take 2 days to get rid of it, as look at the man who is working over there. He does look strong, but using a pickaxe might not be the best way to approach such a problem,
said Twilight.
This world doesn't have magic that can perform such miracles like in Equestria, Twilight, so they have to go with whatever they can, and in this case he's using a simple tool to get the job done. I agree a pickaxe isn't a good choice, but then I doubt he has access to any bombs. Then again, I doubt bombs are going to destroy that boulder as they don't have enough firepower,
I said. I then folded my arms and started to think about a possible solution, but my mind drew nothing but blanks for a few moments until something else those men said came to mind. They mentioned the Gorons having a new kind of bomb which could do the trick, yet because they have their own problems, they can't send one of their own down here, but even if it were possible to send help, the pathway to the mountains has been blocked by ice.
Until we can find a way through to the mountains, I guess we've got to rely on that guy over there. Maybe it won't be so bad waiting,
suggested Twilight.
I guess, but you can never tell, especially with someone like Starlight causing problems,
I said. I wanted to speak to this man digging away at the boulder, but I suddenly stopped upon noticing Pinkie Pie floating in the sky further ahead via her balloon.
How did she get here ahead of us? Do you really expect her to answer that?
Asked Twilight.
No, but maybe she will talk about this area now that she's here,
I replied. Since I didn't have anything to use as a projectile aside from bubbles, I took out the Deku mask, and put it on, which resulted in the painful-looking transformation from a human to a Deku scrub. It's going to take some time getting used to doing this. Upon changing forms, I looked up at Pinkie Pie, and fired a bubble which popped her balloon, and she yelled before dropping down. Once she had landed, I took the Deku mask off to go back to being human, where I approached her, where she jumped for joy at seeing me again.
Welcome again, Mrs. Fairy, said Pinkie Pie.
Because this was still the same cycle, she remembers me even though she calls me Mrs. Fairy instead of Sunset Shimmer, but I suppose I'll take what I can get from this.
Tingle is so happy to see you again, and like I said before, I would be here quickly because of my balloon. Now, I know that you are here to get some information, but perhaps you would like a map of this area? Milk Road may be a small place when compared to the 4 regions, but having a map can be pretty handy. So, are you interested in one of Tingle's maps? How much?
I asked.
For a map of Milk Road, it will cost you 20 rupees, and for a map of Woodfall, 40 rupees,
replied Pinkie Pie. Checking my wallet, I discovered that I had enough to buy the first one, but not the second, which wasn't necessarily bad because I'm sure to get it from her when I eventually go there. I guess going through the grass really did pay off, otherwise I'd be disappointing Pinky right about now. Handing over the 20 rupees, she reached into a pocket and pulled out a map which she gave to me.
Yippee! You now have Tingle's map of this area, so now you will know where to go. About that information, I began. Since I'm in Milk Road now, Mrs. Fairy, I feel more inclined to talk about what can be found here. Do you see that path that goes off to the left? If you go that way, you'll reach the Gorman racetrack, which is where the Gorman sisters reside. They are known for breeding powerful horses, but their motivations are often questionable. People come from all over to race on their track, but they can't help but be suspicious," said Pinkie Pie. "Are they related to the Gorman troupe?" I asked. "Gorman is the brother among the three of them, and used to work there, but he had dreams of show business which prompted him to leave. Rumors say that the sisters are always worried about Gorman, but they never admit this to anyone. Another rumor says that they estrange Mask on their property, which has something to do with an ancient kingdom that once existed in Termina, but I don't know for sure if this is true. You may have to talk to them about it should you be curious enough," replied Pinkie Pie. "And the ranch?" I asked. "Everyone who is everyone knows all about Romani Ranch, and if you don't then you've been living under a really heavy rock for a very long time. The ranch is well known for producing the famous Chateau Romani, a milk that has magical properties where drinking it will give infinite magic power to those who possess any. However, unless you happen to be made of rupees, you can't afford this beverage, so you'll have to settle for regular milk. Things haven't been good at Romani Ranch lately, for everything started going wrong when the original owners sadly passed away some time ago. The older daughter runs it now, but I hear she has reached her limit in terms of stress. If you really are curious, Mrs. Fairy, you should talk to her about it when the boulder has been cleared," replied Pinkie Pie. This Chateau Romani really intrigues me now, for having infinite magic would be the best thing ever, considering that I only have a small amount to use, and I should consider picking up some magic jars by cutting down grass as I'm almost out. Even though this was a different version of Pinkie Pie, she knew me well, as I intend on finding out more about this Romani Ranch. If it's anything like Lon Lon Ranch back in Hyrule, I could find Epona here. Yeah, it was a long guess on my part, but I've got to believe my guess to be correct. I had nothing more to ask her, although I did want to know more about Woodfall, but she would prefer to be in that area before she talks about it. For wearing a green spandex suit, and behaving in such an eccentric manner, Pinkie is well versed about Termina, which has me wondering how she knows so much. Was the character she is portraying, Tingle, I believe it was, this knowledgeable? "Looks like I have no more questions," I said. "In that case, I should get back to my usual business. Waiting for a fairy of my own. Tingle will get a fairy, for Tingle strongly believes this. Well, call again. Tingle, Tingle, Kololimpa," said Pinkie Pie. She didn't say anything about stealing her words, and that must be because I've already talked to her earlier. She then re-inflated her balloon before taking to the sky once again, and while I wanted to gain access to Romani Ranch, I'm not able to because the boulder was still there. Methinks I could have planned this out a little more carefully, as now I've got to wait until tomorrow morning before I can see the current owner. That means I have to sleep out here for the night, and even though there aren't any monsters right now, who knows what might happen during the next night? To be continued. End of chapter.